so I won't have to live with him again or stay there with him.
Yeah, he said during his confession that he admitted that he bound your hands and your feet, but he also said that he made hamburgers for you. How did he act around you? Was he trying to befriend you, or was he constantly threatening you, Sarah?
No, I think he was just trying to say that in his letter to make people think that he felt good about himself.
A long time ago on this channel, I did a video about this girl, Sarah Maynard. If you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out. But essentially, the details of the case are as follows. Sarah Maynard was abducted by Matthew Hoffman, who killed her mother and her mother's friend and her brother. He restrained her with an extension cord, threw her in the backseat of his car, and took her to his home where he would torture and abuse her, making her sleep in a pile of leaves in the living room. Police were eventually able to track him down from security camera footage. They raided his home and managed to find Sarah Maynard alive. Now, despite the grisly events that unfolded to lead to this point, as far as a kidnapping, imprisonment, and abduction case is concerned, this qualifies as a happy ending. Few individuals get kidnapped, held at a location for an extended period of time, and then are found alive. But in 2016, a kidnapping would occur that would lead to a very bizarre and unexpected investigation that would strike fear into a community, shatter a family, and lead to a very interesting interrogation. On November 2nd, 2016, a woman named Sherri went out for a run. Sherri was both a wife to her husband Keith and a mother to 2 children, 1 son and 1 daughter. But that morning, on November 2nd, Sherri's family would go through a true nightmare scenario. Keith returned home from his shift at Best Buy later that day on November 2nd, and his wife was nowhere to be found. He also learned that she had failed to pick up their children from school. Of course, Keith immediately began to think something was wrong. He attempted to use the Find My iPhone feature to locate his wife, but that just led to him finding Sherri's phone and earbuds, which appeared to be tossed on the ground and abandoned about a mile away from their home. Not a great sign. So he promptly reported his wife's disappearance to police, who were quick to respond and classify her as a missing person. But Keith believed that there was something more sinister at play here. He felt strongly, based on the evidence, that his wife had been abducted. The search for Sherri went underway fairly quickly. The police executed over a dozen search warrants as they combed through a list of potential suspects, including Keith himself. Keith agreed to take a polygraph to rule himself out as a suspect, and the polygraph came back as inconclusive. Eventually, even the FBI got involved in the search for the missing woman. But regardless of how wide they searched, how many people they questioned, it just didn't seem like they were getting any closer to finding Sherri. But then there would be a major and unexpected break in the case a few weeks later, shortly before Thanksgiving 2016. A truck driver was making his way down Interstate 5 in Shasta County, California, when he saw what appeared to be a woman running down the road. When he got closer, he realized that the woman had a chain around her waist as well as other bindings hanging off her arms. She also appeared to be severely beaten and bruised. The truck driver quickly notified authorities, who confirmed that this was the missing woman, Sherri, and the story she told authorities about her ordeal was terrifying.
It has been 2 weeks now since Sherri Papini was spotted along the side of the road. The wife and mother of 2 wearing restraints, bruised, branded reportedly. Now authorities are telling People magazine they still do not know why she was taken. They also admit they have few clues about the 2 Hispanic women Papini described.
Based off Sherri's recounting of events, here is what transpired when Sherri went missing on November 2nd, 2016. On November 2nd, Sherri left to go for a run. A little ways into her run, a dark SUV pulled up next to her with 2 Hispanic women inside, with their faces covered. One of them brandished a gun, pointed it at Sherri, and forced her into the SUV. Once inside, Sherri began to struggle to escape when one of her captors produced a syringe which they injected her with. After this, Sherri began to slip in and out of consciousness. She was unable to tell where they were or how long they were driving in the SUV. Eventually, they stopped and moved Sherri into a house. Again, she could not tell where they were because they had covered her head, preventing her from seeing anything. The two women who had abducted her also kept their faces covered most of the time when they interacted with Sherri. Once they had Sherri inside the house, they chained her in a closet where they would keep her most of the time. They would also frequently hit her, beat her, and this would lead to cuts and bruises that were found all over her body when she was finally recovered. At one point, Sherri attempted to escape captivity, but they caught her and burned her as a punishment. They said nothing in regards to why they had kidnapped her or what they wanted. But as the days passed, one of the women began to feel sorry for Sherri. She would loosen her restraints and started treating her a little kinder, until eventually, the woman's guilt became so great that they were keeping this woman captive who had a whole family, a husband and 2 children who cared about her, that she ended up helping Sherri escape. She freed her and dropped her off at the side of the road, where Sherri just ended up running and running until she was spotted by that truck driver who contacted authorities. Now, as happy as Sherri's family and friends were to have her back home, this shifted the investigation entirely. Now, police needed to find out who was responsible for kidnapping and imprisoning Sherri. Meanwhile, in the media, the case blew up. News outlets reported on it, and they wanted interviews with Sherri to talk about her ordeal. Keith was trying to help in the investigation any way he could, following up with police, getting other investigators on board, and in general trying to be proactive in finding out what happened to his wife and who was responsible. Fortunately, though, through the use of DNA and forensics analysis, investigators were actually able to track down the individual responsible for Sherri's disappearance. And it was Sherri. I'll explain, but before I do, let's see if Sherri can first. This is her police interrogation after police had put the pieces together that Sherri herself was most likely behind her own disappearance.
Okay. That was of interest. With that, we started looking at different people and who might be involved and just trying to figure it out. And I wanted to show you this picture. And obviously, people can change their weight, people can change the color of their hair. Don't. Just because the photo might be a little bit different, as you know, women like to change their hair and their makeup, their weight can change, so that might be a little bit different. But we wanted to take a look at this 6-pack and see if you recognize anybody. See these 6 photos. You don't feel like you have to provide an answer. There's no right or wrong answer. Just let us know if you see anybody in this photo that you do recognize, and if you do, we'll talk about how. Okay.
At this point, the detectives give Sherri various photographs of potential suspects and tell her to pick out whichever one she remembers or whichever one triggers some kind of new memory. She stammers through the next few minutes, trying hard not to make it totally obvious that she doesn't recognize anyone in the photographs. We'll skip this section of questioning because everything Sherri says here is obviously fabricated, and at this point the detectives are playing along with her ruse. Not too much of interest to us here.
So were you able to find like where that house is?
Yes.
And what? Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
That's where I was going next.
To the top 1 or 2.
And may I ask, how did we even get to that point? How did we get that photo?
Familia DNA.
So they said, they came back and said, oh, here's some people related in this familia.
There's about 40 people total.
That's a good thing, I guess.
But 40 is better than
you just started
60
going
million,
through and then
130, whatever the
boom,
numbers
that
are.
caught your eye.
Yeah, we started looking at everything that we could. Phones, online presence,
Cool.
criminal history, Facebook photos, DMV photo, what
Happy
they
to hear you guys
drive.
are still on.
And like he said, Denise is obviously, you guys are aware, Denise is
Yeah.
at a different location now. She's the one that found that picture. So we cast a wide net to start finding certain aspects.
Is she still working on the case even though she's in?
Not officially, but I always call her and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that?
I love her so much. I was
But yeah,
so
she's still
sad.
working on it in an informal way.
So
I promise I'll try not to make it a habit of interrupting the interrogation every 2 seconds once things start really heating up. However, once again, as part of the ruse, the detectives are leading Sherri to believe that they have located the house which she claims to have been held for a month. This is in part to try to get Sherri to admit to what she's done, and also to lead her further and further down the rabbit hole of her own lies before the major confrontation. We'll skip through most of this section as well.
So one of the things that we always noted in the bathroom description is just the weird layout of the bathroom. So do you remember the layout of the bathroom?
Yes. Well,
let's talk about the description, best description, and then we'll start showing some pictures.
there's door, toilet, sink, tub. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So you walk in the door, first there's a toilet.
Yes.
On the
Remember
right
which side?
If I'm...
She's a
It's been a while.
world with just in general.
I don't know.
But whatever, you walk in the door, on one left or right, you have a toilet, then...
I want to say it's on the left. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I want to say toilet on the left.
Okay, so maybe a toilet on the left.
Okay, hold on. Toilet on the side.
Toilet on the side, and then what's
Toilet
next?
on the side. Sink. Tub.
Okay.
And that's a unique thing about bathrooms.
Yes.
We all
Yep.
agree with
Hard
that.
to change
Yeah.
where
Said
that
that
sewer will go,
day
right?
one.
It takes some expense to do that.
Yes. Yes. To me.
And
So the order is correct, but you don't recognize the bathroom as being what you recall. Do you remember there was a detail about the shower that you provided previously? About the type of something on the tile or something like that? Do you remember
That
any
there
of
was
those?
tile in the tub? There was a crack.
Where was the crack? It's not a memory test. If you don't remember, that's fine. But
It certainly is not a memory test in the Bop It or Simon Says sense of the word, but it is a test in a different context. If an individual were to go through something so incredibly harrowing as being abducted, restrained, tortured, and abused, it is very unlikely that the details of those events would ever wash from the person's memory. The details that the detectives are trying to get Sherri to recall here were details she gave at her initial statement. She attempts to recall them, but in many cases can't quite do it, or gets the details just slightly off, the way an individual would if they memorized the answers for an exam, took the exam, forgot all the things they memorized, and were asked to recall those things at a later date. Not like someone who truly lived through that kind of trauma.
we remembered that detail when we took some of these photos, and we were just trying to bump it up against what you might remember.
I don't know.
In general, are we talking about... Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. You take your time.
I don't know. I remember there's a crack. I'm not.
So for like trying to, do you remember if it was high or low? Was it any of those like details?
Horizontal, vertical. One tile, lots of tiles.
We're showing you all of this because ultimately this is the house that you were at. We talked to the people who live there. We found the house. We found who was involved. We talked to who was involved. We talked to family who knows that you were there. And talked to a couple people talked to one guy who did see you during this event. Unfortunately, there's a lot of truths. There's a lot of things that were said that we have always confirmed. That we've always said. There's a lot of truths, and then there's some unknowns. Like one of the simple ones, like, well, this description of the bathroom is just weird. Like that was like an argument in all of our offices where we were sitting there like this part's weird. But then we find a house with it. then the all thread through the thing, that's just weird.
It's unique to this place. Like, that's a pretty custom, you can't just go out to IKEA and buy a closet that looks like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So once we have all those things and we start talking to the person who lives here, who had lived there, who still lives there, start talking to his family and starting that whole investigation, peeling one thing back after another, doing the same thing we've done for the last 4 years. It led us to a specific person, but not a female. It led us to the car that picked you up, but not an SUV. So there's lots of different aspects that are truths and falsehoods. And we're to the point now that nobody would have ever imagined that this would have blown up the way that it did. So I've been a cop 15 years. I've never seen the media scale that this garnered pretty quickly. How long have you been in law enforcement now?
12 years in the Bureau.
So, like, of the minds, Brian, who's been around 20 plus years, people have been in my office like 25, 30 plus years. The media attention that this got out was insane. So I think with that being said, some choices and some decisions ultimately changed the original path of what happened. I don't think anybody would have wished the media frenzy that occurred, like for this event, no matter what the situation, if it was a kid, because the media skewed so many facts. It brought so many people in from the woodwork that if we didn't have the woodwork, we wouldn't have the noise.
And that brings a lot of pressure when you get that kind of scrutiny.
So we'd like to talk to you more about those things, and we can do it with Keith here, or we can ask Keith to leave. It's whatever you're comfortable with, so we can break down some of the problems. If you want Keith here, all we want is to have the truth. All we want is to be able to tell the truth. That's all we've ever wanted from day one. We've talked with you for hours, we've been there, we've done all these different things, waiting for something, waiting for it to break, waiting for us to leak something to hear. Because the DNA came back, like I said, to a specific person. That specific person told us very specific things.
This is the moment where the heat officially gets turned up on Sherri. You'll notice the detective repeating certain things multiple times in different ways, namely the word truth. He repeats that quite a number of times as he transitions into this next portion of the interrogation. This is a subtle way of indicating to Sherri that they know not everything she has told them has been the actual facts, insinuating that they have the information that Sherri gave them, but now they want the truth.
His family then told us specific things. So if we can talk with Keith or without Keith here, what would you like? It's completely up to you. And like I've always said, I wanted you to have a voice. I wanted you to make decisions. I wanted you to control certain aspects. I think I told you that on the first interview we ever had. I never want to bully you. I never want you to believe I'm bullying you. I want you to take back control. That's one of those things. This is that take back control of the interview, which I promised you to do the first time we talked, if you remember that. Actually, we were in Mount Shasta, so the second time we talked.
It's been a long road, Sherri, but we just want to talk to you. We can have Keith step out if that's going to make you more comfortable.
But it's up to you.
Do you want to step out or do you want to stay?
Obviously, I want to stay.
Or we can do a little bit of both. Talk to you alone first and then have him come back in.
It's completely up to you. And that's why I'm not even looking at Keith. I don't care about your opinion, Keith.
I know.
What we want out of this is the truth. So we can get ahead of some things, so we can help control things, how crazy things got, so the unknown of if I say certain things, what's Keith's reaction? Because you don't know what I'm going to say, right? So I don't know Keith's reaction either. So if I say other things like, oh, Keith won't worry about that, he can come back in. But I'd rather give you the opportunity to hear things, be able to judge it, because at everything, right, I'm saying things to you that are making you nervous. It's making Keith nervous. It's changing the element, right? We changed the tone of the interview.
You can feel it already in the room from the way you walked into what you're feeling right now.
Well, I mean, law enforcement has always been an issue, so.
Okay.
So if you want Keith to leave, I'll ask Keith nicely to leave. If you don't want Keith to leave, then he can sit here and
let's press on. We'll press on.
And we'll move on to the next stages. But I want to give you that opportunity first.
Well, if he makes you feel safe too, we can continue on.
Go.
Either you can
Can I
change your
talk
mind.
to him?
Absolutely. And again, I just don't know what the pieces are. So if I would say, hey, this is going to bring the whole world down, I'd tell you, this is going to bring the whole world down. And then we need to talk alone. Or I would suggest we talk alone. But that's completely up to you guys, because I don't know.
I just want to talk to him.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
What the detectives did here was masterful. They are fully aware of the implications of what really happened with Sherri, and how the truth of what happened could potentially destroy her marriage, after dropping hint after hint after hint that what she did could destroy her castle, as one of the detectives put it. They promptly leave the room to allow Sherri and Keith to discuss it on their own, albeit with half the department watching from a monitor in the other room. At this point, Sherri realizes that at least some portion of the truth will come out, no matter what. They know she's lying, and at this point, in her mind, she needs to identify what they know and see if she can lie about it so the damage to her marriage to Keith could be mitigated. Keith, on the other hand, is now fully aware that there's something his wife is hiding from him. She knows, the detectives know, and now he's wound up, out of the loop, and confused. The detectives cleverly realize that they will potentially get more valuable information from setting a bomb and allowing Sherri and Keith to try and defuse it on their own than they would from continuing the interrogation.
You need to stop waiting around and tell me the truth. I don't want anything to happen. Yeah, whatever you're doing, that doesn't mean anything. It's tough to me. Okay, but the second guy knows about what's going on, so you need to explain to me.
I don't give a shit about that. I don't want them to find her. I don't want them to find her. I don't want her to be arrested. I don't want to press charges on her. I don't want to find her.
Explain to me right now that you prescribe this.
I don't know. I don't want them to find her. You're not listening to
But tell me
me.
why.
Because she saved my life.
But tell me, honey, there's obviously something going on. There's obviously something. Tell me this is going to be really bad if you don't tell me.
Look at how you're being right now.
I am.
I'm fucking with you.
No, I'm not
Look at how
being
you're right now. I don't want them to find her. I don't want to press charges, and I don't want to go down that road.
But you tell her?
I don't want to go down that road. I don't
Tell
want
me
to
why.
arrest her because she saved my life, and she's the reason why I get to hold my children
I
every
want you
single
to
day.
know that in this
I don't want to get into the fight to the police. I don't want them to
But when you
find
find
her.
What did you lie on?
I don't want them to arrest her
Why?
because she saved my life.
So you don't press charges. They still need to find out who it is. Yeah. Well, I can talk to them and tell them what you're thinking. That's just, do you want me in the room or not?
And obviously,
Hopefully you've had a chance to chat briefly.
the fears,
Later, maybe. But I'd rather you just answer the question.
nothing that I'll say to you, I won't eventually tell him if you want me to.
Do you want me to just tell them what your fears are?
We would love to hear what you're hearing, because we want to be able to address them as best we can.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like you're in the driver's seat right now.
I think it's easier to control things once you know what the information is, to be honest with you, Sherri. So I can tell you what it is, say what it is when Keith leaves, and then you can say yes or no, whether or not you want him in there for the rest of it.
For right now, he's just, am I in the room or am I out of the room? So that's the...
And I'm to the point where if you want him here, we'll just go on with the conversation.
As long as you're not interrupting or causing any disturbance.
I'll stay over here.
But if he steps out, I can say a name, and then you can choose whether you want him in here for the rest of it or not. It's completely up to you. Or I can just continue on, and again, like I said, I wanted you to always have control over certain aspects of stuff. We're not to a point where anybody's going to jail yet. We're not to a point of anything like that. We're just still at the talking stage. We're at the control stage.
You seem scared, Sherri.
No, it's not scared.
What is it?
Look, Sherri, look at me. What do you want?
I don't want her to get in trouble.
She's not going to get in trouble. So the DNA came back to James Reyes.
The DNA that was on you belongs to James Reyes.
The picture, and can I get the picture? The picture of the table is James Reyes' little brother. He died recently. We talked to him. He's been on a polygraph. We talked to everybody around him. We have the rental agreements, phone rental, car rental agreements. We have everything that says that he said he told the truth.
That's James' brother, deceased Nick.
So everything, you've told us so many truths in this situation. The reason why you can describe the room is because you stayed in the room in the dark for hours, for days on end. The reason why you lost so much weight is because you stopped eating. The reason why you got a rash on your arm is because you cleaned his house. The reason why the brand is because he went to the store, bought the branding tools, and branded you. The reason why your nose was broke is because of a hockey stick. I know all of those things, and I know there was no sex. I know all of that because he passed a polygraph test that said it's not an abduction. She asked me to come get her.
No.
I rented a car.
No.
I drove up and picked her up. He passed the polygraph test, Sherri.
If that's not what happened, what did happen, Sherri?
I don't know. No, there's no way. It's James. There's no way. There's no way.
The DNA doesn't lie.
His DNA
His DNA was on you.
There's no way.
Robert saw you in the house while you were down there. While everything spun out of control, his cousin.
Now, when presented with such overwhelming evidence of deception, people usually react in one of two ways. They might crack under the pressure of the mountain of evidence, admit to what they did, preserve what little shred of dignity they might have left, and come clean, realizing that there's no way to talk themselves out of the situation, and trying to heap another pile of lies on top of such undeniable proof would only make them seem way worse. That's one way to react. The other way is to double down.
Why everything ran out of control on the initial.
There's no way.
It's 100% Robert's or James's DNA.
We even collected blonde hairs from the room.
There's no way it's James. There's no way.
Tell me argue that it is.
Why are you saying it's not, James? Why are you saying it's not?
He loves me.
What's that?
We were friends.
Mhm.
There's no way.
And he came and got you because you asked him.
No.
When was the last time you had contact with James?
His brother died.
Brother died in 2017. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Was it before or after the abduction?
Before.
Before.
When was the last time you saw James?
Forever ago, when I lived in Southern California.
So the last person-to-person contact you had with him was back in 2006? When you were living in Southern California?
I don't know.
So,
Was it prior to your marriage?
It's him. There is no way it's him.
well, it is
The
James.
DNA tells us that it was his
Well-
DNA on you.
The DNA alone says it's him. And when we talked to him and confronted him with the DNA,
He told us what happened.
he 100% told us what happened.
He gave us details that nobody else would know.
And we can call him and we can all talk about it. But ultimately, can you look at me for a second? Ultimately, we put him on a polygraph like we did Keith. Keith was inconclusive, to be honest with you, on whether he was involved or not. But 100% James was showing the truth. The questions were, did Sherri ask you to come pick her up? He answered yes. That was the truth on a polygraph. We asked him if the two of you ever had sex. The answer was no.
During 2016.
During 2016, during the abduction, he said no. That was the truth. We asked him if you asked him to brand you. The answer was yes. And he passed the polygraph on all of those questions. He took us to the stores where he bought the chain. We talked to the friend who rented the car. The car that he rented drove over 900 miles in a day on the drop-off point.
Sherri, I know this is a lot to take in.
All
But
of
it's not
the-
like we don't know the answers to these questions.
And the fear of Keith's reaction, obviously now he's in the room, the fear of media, the fear of all of these things are coming forward. They're in front of you now. The only way to get a hold of it, the only way for everybody to come together and heal, the whole community has to heal, is for us to be able to say, when we presented all of the evidence, all of the stuff that came forward, you told us the truth. You told us what happened. Because you did go in a dark room, that's true. You did lay in the back seat of a car, that's true. You did lose weight, you were branded, your hair was cut. You did have bruises all over. But how those bruises got there are because you did it and James did something. The reason why your nose got broke is because you held the hockey stick to your face and he forced it into your nose. The reason why the brand is in a straight line is because he did it. He described exactly where it was. He told us exactly how he did it, where he did it, how he did it. Only you and I and maybe 5 other people know where the brand was. He told me immediately. Robert told friends and family you were there. His mom knew that you were there because of course it went news and everybody knew you guys dated. Everybody knew you guys had a relationship. So when it happened, of course, family reached out to him and told him, yeah, she was here. But it said it hurt her, but I didn't hurt her. So,
What are you thinking, Sherri?
What the detective has done here is essentially give the unabridged Scooby-Doo style wrap-up that not only explains exactly what happened, but also contradicts every single lie that Sherri has told regarding her fake abduction in point-by-point rebuttal. Now, surely, Sherri will cease with the charade and come clean.
That doesn't make any sense.
Ah, guess not.
Why doesn't it make sense?
What actions doesn't make sense?
A lot of it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Can we talk about those?
No.
James' DNA was confirmed on your clothes. The two of you haven't seen each other in over a decade. If you told me that you haven't been in his room, you haven't had contact with him in over 10 years. However,
You described his bedroom to a T.
and the DNA on you was still a vibrant piece of DNA. 10-year-old DNA dies. The DNA that was there specifically was non-seminal fluid, was seminal fractions. You got that from his house somewhere. So whether it was the bed that you were sleeping on, where it was the couch, whether it was anywhere in there. When somebody would come to the door and be around the property, you'd call James, James would call Robert, which is those 2 doors down. Robert would run people off the property. Robert told me all of that. James told me everything. So the only person that hasn't started telling us certain facts, there are certain facts that are true. When we were sitting there talking to James, there were so many truths that were a part of your story that it's hard to decipher the lies until we put it all together. Until he says, hey, how did you pick her up? I opened up the passenger side seat, I opened the door, you jumped in the back seat. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I don't know. It was weird. So are you calling James a liar? Are we not believing James what he told me?
No.
I know you're scared.
Cannot believe that it is James.
I can't believe James told us the truth. That's what I can't believe. He passed a polygraph, Sherri.
So did Keith.
No, he didn't. He was inconclusive. And he was involved.
So James is involved, but I don't...
James picked you up. You called James to pick you up. You mailed him a letter with your address. You used a burner phone to call another burner phone for James to come and get you.
You're saying since you're married you haven't called James?
No, I have called James.
Because earlier you said you had contacted James. Because phone records show that you do. You did. The phones don't lie, the DNA doesn't lie, Sherri.
His polygraph doesn't lie.
So you can go a couple different directions now.
His story.
I've already told you lying to me is a crime. So you walk out the door telling lies, and that's a crime.
I think we need my lawyer. This isn't making any sense.
This was a long road. I had no idea what it was going to take me. But right now, continuing and saying that 2 girls took you is a lie to Peter. It's just a lie. Because we were able to prove it with evidence. With a rental car agreement, person driving to 1,000 miles in a day, the DNA on you, and him passing a polygraph, it's 3 legs to the table and can stand it.
He's going to wait out there. Now's your opportunity. Based on your reaction previously, what you're telling me is you did not call James and ask him to come get you? Is that what you're saying? Because if that's what you're saying, I have to understand that. There are things he says that we can corroborate, and whatever you say, we're going to try and corroborate. But right now, I'm not sure what you're saying. You're just saying you can't believe it's him. And you're saying you don't understand. But there are details he provided. We know you were in his house. We collected hairs from that bedroom. That's going to have DNA on it. We already have your hairs that you left with your cell phone when you were picked up.
You have my DNA, obviously.
So that's not going to lie either. The descriptions you provided are that room and that house to a T, except it's not a gravel driveway. And it's not elevated. And there's not 2 women who live there.
But James lives there.
James lives there.
You know James lives there. We need to be able to control the outcome and what's going to happen next. The only thing we know is going to happen right now is what you can tell us, what you can shed light on, and for other people to be able to try to understand. If it was a mistake, it was a mistake. But at this point, not telling us what happened, not telling us the truth is another mistake. It's a mistake on top of a mistake. Right now, we can start over. We can leave without a dirty conscience, without the what's going to happen next. Right now,
deep down inside, Sherri, I know you know what's right and what you should do, and you should come clean.
Why did you ask James to come get you? You asked Donovan the night before to come meet up with you. Everything happened at once. You were asking two.
Stupid thing to do.
You asked
The thing about it is we were able to prove that Donovan never came up here. But now we can prove that James did. We have records to prove it.
I don't understand.
Although you might not think it was a good idea now, 2020 hindsight. At the time, why did you ask him to come pick you up? Was that an I don't know? What's that?
Can't be James.
It is James. We can
Sherri,
call
the DNA doesn't lie. His DNA was on you. Your DNA is going to be in that room.
1 in septillion that was James. I don't even know how many zeros septillion is, to be honest with you.
That's why, despite your description of how far you might have gone in the car, we already went down there. We knocked on his door. We took those pictures. He understood that the DNA didn't lie, so he came clean. Now it's your chance to do the same. And if you don't, you're going to be shaking your head later and say, I should have told him what happened.
Talk to me like that.
Like what?
We're almost done here, but a few closing notes. The case of Sherri Papini is an excellent example of not understanding the reality of how investigations are conducted, not understanding how people will react when confronted by law enforcement, and being too short-sighted to see how one's actions could lead to serious, long-term consequences. We'll break down her illogical thinking pattern here in a moment.
There's so many fears right now that we can't even wrap our head around it. There's too many unknowns that we can't control. We can't control what the media is going to do. We can't control what everybody's going to think. The only thing we can control right now is to control that James told us the truth, and that's a yes or a no. What did James lie about? What did James lie to us about? Of the things I've told you.
I don't know. I just don't know. There's just no way it can be James. I just don't know. I don't know.
It is James. That's not even a question anymore.
We know you were in that room. That's already clear.
You described everything in the room.
I didn't do anything.
Right? But right now, answer this one question. Did a female point a gun at you, yes or no?
I am done speaking to you until I talk to a lawyer. I will not arrest her. I am with my children because of her.
I'm disappointed, Sherri.
I don't understand. There is no way that this James, he loves me.
You did love me. I agree.
Sherri, if you want to talk to your attorney, that's fine. We can wrap this up. If you want to keep talking to us, that's a separate story, but you said you wanted to talk to your attorney, so like I said from the beginning, you're free to go and you can go. I would ask you one more question, just for your own welfare. Do you feel like harming yourself?
I want to welfare.
Do you feel like harming yourself?
No, I just want to hug my children and go home.
Okay. Well, you're free to go and do that. If you change your mind and want to come forward and talk to us,
This is all my fault because I talked to other men. This cannot be.
And with that, the interrogation of Sherri essentially is over. She retreats back to her fanciful story about a woman who helped her escape her imaginary captivity, requests a lawyer, and then the detectives leave. One interesting thing of note, in the last few seconds of that interview, she says, "It can't be James. He loved me." This one line betrays the reasoning behind her hysterical crying breakdown. Other than the fact that she was caught in a massive lie, she simply cannot believe that James betrayed her by confessing to police. Shortly after this, the police bring Sherri's husband Keith in for a short discussion about how they'll proceed moving forward. So let's break down exactly what Sherri did and identify just some of the gaps in her thinking. Sherri Papini was not happy in her marriage. Sherri Papini wanted to have an affair with her ex. But not just any affair. She wanted to have a month-long affair. But 39-year-old married mothers typically don't have the leeway to simply vanish from their families for a month with no explanation. So Sherri hatched a plan along with her ex-boyfriend and ex-fiancé James, which was corroborated by cell phone records. On November 2nd, 2016, she would have James drive 200 miles from Costa Mesa in Orange County, California, to Sacramento to pick her up when she told the rest of the family she was going for a run. She would then pretend she was kidnapped by 2 Latina women and held captive for a month, when in reality she would be living with James. She would falsify physical evidence of the alleged kidnapping and emerge just in time for Thanksgiving. How did she get James to agree to this? Well, she told him her husband was abusive, of course. And so they drove back to James' apartment in Costa Mesa, where Sherri would spend the following few weeks. She would order him not to have any guests and chase away any unexpected visitors. She would make him sleep on the couch while she took his room. Meanwhile, in Shasta County, searches for her were underway. They, of course, didn't have the first clue as to where to actually look for Sherri. And then Sherri started inflicting injuries to herself, much to the surprise of James, who did not know that this was part of the plan. She started hitting herself to create bruises, burning her own arms, barely eating, and then she asked him to help her inflict these injuries, which he obliged, going so far as to hit her with a hockey puck to create even larger-looking bruises. She even ordered him to brand her with a wood-burning tool, a brand which she would later claim she received as punishment for attempting to escape from her captors. Shortly after this, Sherri told James that she missed her family and wanted to go back to them in Northern California. And so, James made the 200-mile drive once again, dropping Sherri off in Yolo County near Interstate 5 before leaving himself to go to a relative's house for Thanksgiving. Sherri would then procure chains, ropes, and other various bindings, wrap them around herself, and then run down Interstate 5 to make it look like she just escaped from captivity. Sherri was discovered off Interstate 5, where she would claim she was being held captive in a house by 2 Latina women, where she was chained up, beaten, and tortured, before one of the women took pity on her and helped her escape. She claimed to remember almost nothing of the ordeal, said that she was drugged and passed out much of the time, which led to her not having any useful information regarding finding the perpetrators. The case ended up blowing up in the media much more than she had anticipated, leading to larger police involvement, which ultimately led to the truth behind the whole situation.
She was bound. She had a chain around her waist. She had a bag over her head. I can't remember if it's her right or her left arm was chained to the chain, and her left hand was in the vehicle.
This morning, pretty chilling description there from Sherri Papini's husband. Bruises all over her body, broken nose, her hair cut off, branded.
There's not a lot that they could go on, and I'm sure that they're, looking at everything.
Are they still actively searching for those 2 women, though?
There are some bizarre new details emerging tonight in the case of Sherri Papini, the mom who vanished for 3 weeks only to be found tied up on the side of a country road. Her husband is now speaking out about the appalling condition in which his wife was found and about the rumors that the whole thing may have been a hoax.
Sherri Papini ultimately pleaded guilty, apologized in court for lying and wasting police time and resources, and was sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by 36 months of supervised release and a $300,000 fine for wasting police resources. This was, in short, a terrible plan.
Not a great plan.
And one that was inevitably going to be exposed at some point. Sherri did not think that James's name would somehow come up during the investigation, despite the fact that he is an ex-boyfriend and ex-fiancé. Sherri did not think that when confronted by police, James would divulge information regarding the events that transpired. Sherri did not think that the police would go as far as to do DNA testing to uncover James' DNA. Sherri did not think that her story would come under such close scrutiny, believing she could just say she didn't want to get one of the captors in trouble because she helped her escape, and the police would simply drop it, like this was some kind of Lifetime original movie. Sherri did not think about the tenacity that her husband Keith would pursue her case, even getting federal agents involved. Sherri did not think that her case would blow up the way it did in the media. Sherri did not think about the consequences of wasting police resources, falsifying evidence, and lying to authorities. Sherri did not think how faking her abduction would strike fear in those in her community, who now thought someone was driving around kidnapping people right off the street. In short, Sherri did not think.
Sherri, the judge ordered psychiatric treatment. The judge ordered psychiatric treatment. How do you feel about that? You lie to investigate. The judge ordered psychiatric treatment. How do you feel about that? We talked about PTSD today in the court. The judge. Sherri, you don't want to say anything at all. PTSD. Do you want to say anything?